Well, good evening, everyone. I am Eileen. This is Conversation with Eileen, episode number 6. We've had some amazing people on so far talking about the wonderful things that they've done for us, for our community. Tonight, we're going to change it up a little bit. We're going to talk about a topic that I think is really important as we come out of the pandemic, issues that we're seeing, issues that we're going to see, struggles that people are having, and resources that are available. So tonight we have with us Dr. Dr Reynolds. I'm happy to call him friend, but he has a bigger title than that. He is President and Chief Executive Officer of Family and Children's Association, and he is the expert on this subject. So welcome.
Hi, Eileen. Thanks for having me on.
I will ask permission to call you Jeff.
Of course.
Thank you, because you've earned that title of doctor, and it's a well-earned title.
Jeff is fine, and I always remind people it's PhD, not MD. So if you have a cardiac event during a meeting, then I can't be all that helpful. I can probably help you think about the event, but I'm of zero value from a medical perspective, so Jeff is fine.
You're not the guy. Okay. Well, you are the guy tonight, because the topic that we're going to talk about is really your expertise. And, you know, one of the things is maybe just tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and what you kind of do.
Sure. So I have the privilege of running Family and Children's Association, as you said during the intro, and that's an organization that is more than 135 years old. Started here in Nassau County in the late 1800s as an orphanage. And now we run more than 30 different programs that run the lifespan, everything from pre-K, co-op, nursery in the heart of Hempstead to senior programs and everything in between. At last count, we had 340 staff. We've got about a dozen locations. And again, we run a variety of programs, including some programs in the space that we're going to talk about tonight, which is substance use disorders and mental health disorders. And so I really feel privileged to be able to run this organization, although I'm the one that gets to do podcasts and broadcasts and receive awards and those kinds of things. It's really the staff on the front lines that are doing all the work.
So your organization really does cover the gamut, from children to seniors. And that's really amazing. That's a big undertaking. So
it is, especially now, Eileen. And, you know, and like I said, we're here to talk about substance use disorders and mental health, but the other areas that we focus on are just as critical. And so we're talking about early childhood development. We're talking about, we have a gun violence interruption program in the village of Hempstead, and obviously gun violence is on the rise. And then we have a whole suite of senior programs. And I think there is no bigger tragedy out of COVID than is the way we addressed and dealt with our senior population, especially those who are trapped in nursing homes. And so it's almost as if every population that we've worked with, and we focus on disempowered and disenfranchised communities, has been touched disproportionately by COVID. And in fact, we often talk about how we're all in the same storm, but we're in very different boats. And the folks that we serve at FCA, some of them are in canoes and some of them are in life rafts and some of them are just doing the best they can. And so, you know, our goal is to get those people to shore and maybe kind of pluck them out of the water before they're in real trouble.
Well, that's an amazing resource that's available. And that was one of the reasons why, in particular, I wanted to have you on, because I know that your organization does such amazing things for individuals. So tell me, what are you seeing? What are you seeing the issues? What are you seeing people struggle with? And you know, what maybe are some warning signs that some parents can kind of be made aware of for children that may be struggling?
You know, I think one of the great lessons out of COVID is just how intertwined mental health and substance use disorders are. And very often, as we try to treat those two conditions, we do so separately. And in fact, there are even two separate state agencies, one that deals with mental health and one that deals with substance use disorders.
Right.
And I think through the lens of COVID, we came to understand how intimately connected those things are. I think virtually everyone out there experienced some heightened level of anxiety, of depression, of social isolation, of fear, uncertainty, whatever you want to call it during COVID. And so even the most quote unquote well-adjusted folks, whoever they are, really struggled through this pandemic. And many of those folks turned to drugs and alcohol to make it go away. And, case in point, we're coming fresh off some news about a series of overdoses on the East End involving fentanyl and cocaine. And in the past year, we've seen overdoses rise here in Nassau County, overdose fatalities by 35%. So we were making great headway here on Long Island up until COVID hit, and we had managed to bring those overdoses down in a pretty significant way after they really hit their highs in 2016. Well, we gave all of those gains back, and we gave them back because folks that were stressed out, folks that were anxious, folks that were no longer hemmed in to a 9-to-5 job where they needed to be in the office had all the reason in the world to go out and drink and use drugs. At the same time, we had a drug supply that was severely disrupted. If you think about it, where do people get drugs from? Well, they're brought in through the airports. Most flights were closed down and travel was cut off. The ports in New York and New Jersey were tied up during the height of COVID. Police were focused on other things, rightfully so. And you had people trapped in their homes, not having to go to work and unsure as to how to manage everything that they were facing. We also saw, and if you think about it, one of the few essential services here in New York State was what? It was alcohol. And not only did we go from you can't leave a restaurant with an open bottle, now it was back your car up and we'll dump a 55-gallon drum worth of margaritas into your trunk. And those people went home and they started drinking at 2 p.m. in the afternoon and then posted funny memes about it on Facebook. And so we've seen the dramatic increase in alcohol use. We've seen the dramatic increase in drug use. While all this was going on, a lot of the inpatient treatment facilities here on Long Island were emptied to make room for COVID patients.
Wow.
The detoxes were emptied out. So folks that were in detox were ushered back out the door, back out into the community. At the same time, everything was shut down. As an organization, we were able to move a lot of our outpatient services and recovery support services to a virtual environment. Same thing for children's mental health. And for some people, that was really good. For a lot of other people, it definitely wasn't enough.
Sure. Listen, I get it. I've had family members struggle for years with substance abuse, and it is tough. It is tough on every member of the family. Now factor in a pandemic.
Yeah.
I'm glad to say that he finally was ready to get the help that he needed, and he is 5 years clean.
That's awesome.
But I will tell you, it was many, many years of struggle and a huge impact on my family. And you don't realize that you are an enabler until you're not an enabler anymore. And unfortunately, during this pandemic, everybody was, like you say, in the same boat. I'm home, I'm quarantining, I'm doing nothing. And it's funny. Hey, look, I'm having sangria at 2:00 in the afternoon, not realizing the real severity of what could potentially be down the road. Now, not everyone is predisposed to these traits. I do believe, in my opinion, that fentanyl is on the rise.
So we saw a lot of that. The fentanyl issue, and it drove me crazy. Some of the media coverage talked about the bad batch of cocaine on the East End as if there's such a thing as a good batch of cocaine, and that cocaine that's not contaminated can't kill you. Right at this point in time, fentanyl has been pressed into everything. And that's part of what I was alluding to when I talked about the disruption in the drug supply. You have dealers out there that are trying to gain more market share. I mean, it's ironic because fentanyl kills off your customer base, but they're out there kind of marketing, I have the most powerful cocaine in the world, I have the most powerful heroin in the world, and they're peddling it to folks who don't know any better. And the reality is, if you're using cocaine, heroin, or any street drug, it's passed through hundreds of hands before it ever gets to you. So dealer 1 puts in a little bit of fentanyl, dealer 6 puts in a little bit more, dealer 12 adds a little bit more. You have no idea what you're getting.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm really supportive of law enforcement efforts to go after the dealers and if need be, charge them very aggressively. But in my space, the reality is if we reduce the demand for those drugs through treatment, through prevention, through recovery support, then that's our space. And I think it's a good combination of the two. Reduce the supply, and that's what the police do. But also reducing the demand is the piece that we take responsibility for. And like I said, a lot of our outpatient services moved to a virtual environment. In some regards, that was pretty good because we finally overcame some of the transportation barriers that are endemic to Long Island.
Okay.
And so if somebody like me says you ought to come to treatment 3 times a week and you recently got a DWI and lost your driver's license, or
Right.
you're trying to support 2 kids and work 2 jobs in order to do that, when do you actually go to treatment?
Right.
And so, you know, the virtual environment did eliminate some of those barriers, but it also is really hard to connect with another person about intensely personal issues when it comes to some of this stuff. These are really personal conversations, and Zoom is just not the same, particularly for kids. We run a children's mental health program, and, you know, our clinicians would be exhausted at the end of the day. And there was a part of me that was like, you're sitting down, why are you so tired? And, you know, if you've ever tried to engage a 12-year-old in a meaningful conversation, you know how challenging that can be. Now imagine that 12-year-old has a serious mental health diagnosis. Imagine that 12-year-old has a bunch of chaos in their family life happening behind them. Imagine they want to talk about really personal things and they're sitting at the dining room table in front of a laptop with the camera on. It becomes really hard to have meaningful exchanges with that young person. And that's one of the things that we saw. So for some people, the virtual environment when it came to treatment and counseling was a godsend, but for the vast majority of the population, it just wasn't enough to sustain them through a really, really difficult pandemic.
You know, Jeff, I understand the struggle of having a child, you know, who needs the help, and this, unfortunately, was the only avenue. And I think your biggest impact and the people that you have at your organization, what they bring is that personal touch. And unfortunately, that was removed.
Yeah.
In having to utilize what the next best thing was, the next best resource was, which was the computer. So what are you seeing in our children, you know, as they try to get back to normalcy and you know, and re-socialize?
So, you know, for adults going back to work now, we're finding people having a hard time. You know, adults who are used to drinking at 2 p.m. can no longer drink at 2 p.m. And adults who are used to not getting up until 10 o'clock the next day and then maybe doing some work are having a hard time adjusting. I shudder to think what happens when we try to send our kids back to school next month or within the next couple of weeks. And we're also doing it at a time where there's a lot of uncertainty about what will happen in schools. And so, you know, our incoming governor has said that she's going to leave it to the districts, but that masks are recommended. The emergence of a Delta and maybe even another COVID variant have left a lot of that in question. But our kids are going back to a lot of unknowns. Kids that are making a transition, for example, into a new school this year, I think are going to have it particularly tough. And quite frankly, parents are going to have it a little bit tough. You know, one of the struggles in all of this, you know, and I know it's an issue that's dear to you, is the issue of single moms and childcare. And so we even saw that among our staff, and that, you know, folks that had childcare arrangements saw them fall apart. And so we had moms on our staff who were juggling 2 kids on their lap at the same time they're trying to do a Zoom call with somebody else's child in great need. So I think we're going to see the anxiety, the depression, the school refusal in our kids continue to increase. I think, although it's not something that's a primary concern for me, but kids who fell behind in the past year are going to come to understand just how far they fell behind. You know, we use this term learning loss to talk about the past year or so. And again, I don't find that compelling because it's much more important to me that kids are well adjusted and healthy and happy and have positive lives versus, what they might have learned in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is there was a lot of kids going back in a very different state than when they left school, but with a lot of uncertainty. And, understand, our kids thrive on certainty. And that's one of the reasons we said to parents, try to keep a set schedule in the home, because that's the way kids work. They like that predictable schedule. They like bells in schools, and that's when you move and everything is predictable, to take that fear away. All of that is gone. And for parents that are struggling themselves, it's going to be difficult making the transition back. I do think, and I've said this to parents all along, I've always felt that parents should be working more closely with schools, that the schools and school personnel are our allies, not our adversaries, and some parents treat them as such. If there was ever a time to make sure you had the very best and most comprehensive team together for your kids' health, safety, and well-being, now is that time. And so that communication with the school is absolutely critical. That communication with your kid is absolutely critical. It always has been.
Right.
Now more than ever, helping kids verbalize how they're feeling, what they're going through, being able to break through, when they get home, the one-word answers where you say, how was your day? We've all been there. How's your day? Great. Did anything happen? No. How was it again? Fine. To ask more probing questions, like, what was the best thing that happened to you at school today? Who did you sit with at lunch? What's one thing that happened in school today that surprised you? Did you learn one new thing today? Was there one thing that took you aback about going back to school? Who did you reconnect with that you missed over the course of the summer? So our ability, you're back. Our ability to ask our kids more probing questions and engage them in meaningful conversations is going to be even more important than it was pre-COVID.
Something I'm not shy talking about, because I believe that my experience with my own daughter and struggles that she had, not even in a pandemic, but some struggles that she had in 15 seemed to be the age for her. I was very, very, very lucky that she was very verbal with me. And she was actually the one that came to me and said, Mom, I think I need to talk to someone. Mm-hmm. And I thank God, and I feel blessed that she was strong enough and confident enough to share that with me. And it was a long journey, and it was very scary at times.
Yeah.
Now you factor in extenuating circumstances, and that just impacts the child even further. I'm happy to say that she just graduated college. She graduated her last semester completely remote with a 4.0 and is going out into the workspace. So for anyone that might be listening that can relate to that, there is light at the end of the tunnel. You have to put your faith in the people that are professionals in that scope as yourself, and you have to listen to your child. You have to listen to your child, and you have to respond. And as you said earlier, Jeff, communication is such a key. And one of the signs I think we could say would be, those one-word answers, or the lack of maybe an interest in or an answering, or a change in focus. Someone that maybe was liked to play music and all of a sudden isn't playing music anymore. Those are warning signs, and I think it's important to talk about resources that are available. So, of course, we have you. What else can you tell us that would be a good resource for a parent besides Google?
Yeah, so just back on the warning signs, because those are important. And one of the things that we always say to parents is to look for those kinds of changes in interests, in sleeping patterns, in eating patterns, big changes in friends, big changes in Financial status, suddenly your kid's walking around with a whole bunch of money. You should inquire about where it came from. Your kid has no money that you thought they had. What happened to it? One of the difficulties, though, and the moodiness, one of the difficulties is that a lot of those signs look an awful lot like adolescence, normal adolescence, and that's a time of growth and of change. We always encourage parents to go that extra mile and begin having the conversations and talk about what you're seeing and talk about what you're noticing. And then if you're not satisfied with the answers or remain concerned, there are school resources in play. We're very fortunate, particularly in Nassau County, but in Suffolk County as well, to have a ton of government-funded not-for-profits that have really good people in them that are ready, willing, and able to help. And so across Nassau County, in fact, Nassau County runs a 24-hour hotline. It's 516-227-TALK. You could call them anytime, day or night, and get referrals. If you call us at FCA, and you could go to our website at familyandchildrens.org. If we can't help you, we'll make sure that you'll get to the right place. We never say, yeah, we don't do that, and hang up the phone. And so someone will walk you through. If you know of somebody that's having a drug and alcohol issue, there's LICAD that's in Mineola. There are so many resources out there. We're very, very lucky to have this number of resources. Yeah. There's also private clinicians and therapists out there that are ready, willing, and able to help. There is no reason besides your own sense of denial for postponing making a call. And look, you might come to an organization like FCA or another agency or even a private therapist, and they'll say, there's not a lot going on here. I think they're okay. At least you checked it out.
Yes. Yes. I'll roll the dice on Lotto. Not my children.
Right.
Not my children. They are too important. You have brought such important information. I really felt very strongly that this was a topic that definitely needed to be talked about and have a conversation about. There's one more thing that I know about you, and I think it's remarkable because I think it really talks about you are really a very dedicated person to something else that you're very passionate about. You know what I'm alluding to.
Yes, but I missed half the conversation because you dropped out. And I think I know where you're going. But I don't want to make a mistake. So just recap.
So, you're such a multifaceted person. And I've been at the Heroin Task Force, and I've heard you speak. And I've been at other venues, and I've heard you speak. And you are one passionate human being. And I think that is a great description of you. And I think that you carry that throughout many facets of your life, your children, and something that I know you love to do. And I would love for people to know that about you, because it just makes you, just such a real person. So tell us. What is that one thing that you love to do? So
it sounds like you're moving towards my career in triathlon.
Yeah.
So triathlon, marathons, those kinds of things. And so I do. I've done a number of triathlons, number of marathons. I race pretty assertively, and I'll tell you why I do those things. And the whole running thing kind of picked up by accident. It's one of those things where a 5K isn't enough. You're doing a 10K, then a half marathon, then a marathon, and then it's not bad enough to be bad at one sport. You have to be bad at three, and then you have to take on triathlons as well, where you could swim, bike, and run. But one of the things that was important for me is exercise for me is a great boost to my mental health. And so, doing this work can be taxing, can be straining. You've got to get out of your own head, and doing that kind of exercise helps me do it and gives me the dopamine rush every day in a very natural kind of way. It also, particularly doing extreme sports, has given me the ability to be comfortable with being uncomfortable and sitting in that space and understanding it's not going to get any worse. You're not going to die, and you just plow through it and everything's going to be okay. Triathlon is also one of those other things where it's just everybody works together. And I guess, you're competing against another person, but it's one of those things where you see somebody trip and everybody rushes to pick that person back up and help them across the finish line. And so It's different than other sports. It helps me maintain my sanity for what that's worth. And some would argue and say it's not doing a great job of doing that on most days, but it does. And so I love doing it. We're actually starting some new programming at FCA for young people in recovery to get them out and exercising and helping them to experience not only the health benefits, but the mental health benefits associated with physical exercise in the form of doing 5Ks and things like that. So I'm really excited about being able to bring the two worlds together.
I think that is amazing. I think that you bring so much to the table as an individual in your profession and in your personal life. And I love the fact to hear that you're even willing to challenge yourself. And I think that that's amazing. And I think that just speaks to the wonderful person that you are. And I'm happy to know you, and I'm happy to call you my friend. And I want to thank you for your time. I know you are a very, very, very busy individual. And I want you to know that at any time, if there's a message that you want to get out to the community, please feel free to reach out to me. I am happy to be a liaison for you to get anything out. I'm going to list some of the organizations and the phone number with this podcast, so that if this does speak to someone and they want to reach out, we've given them some good information.
Absolutely, Eileen, and thank you for having me on. And I would be remiss if I let you end without me thanking you for all of your public service work. Your support on behalf of veterans and folks in the fire service has been something that I've noticed, and your willingness to advance the public discourse out there and try to make Nassau County a better place is certainly something I admire. It takes a lot of courage to step up, and you do that consistently, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I pale in comparison to you, though.
Stop. Not at all.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. Go be with your beautiful children. And I hope I get to see you soon.
Be well. I'll see you soon.
And stay safe, okay?
You too, Eileen. Take care.
All righty. Thanks again, Jeff.
Bye-bye.